I don't think any of us are clamoring to be North Korean, but for North Korean troops fighting the Ukrainians in Kursk, things seem to be going from bad to worse. Just how bad is it for these North Korean troops who have now finally conducted some independent assaults against Ukrainian positions? They're not long for this world, guys. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is a really interesting report. Now, right, there's some loaded language here calling North Koreans cannon fodder, but this is according to South Korea's top spy agency, said that they think about 100 North Korean troops have been killed after being dispatched to Russia to fight in the war in Ukraine. And we've seen pretty verifiably that at least 30 to 50 of them we watched ourselves get blown up over on Combat Vet News. If you guys aren't members, you should. It's my premium site, sort of like my Patreon. And it's where I do my breakdowns of all of the combat footage. We've done a ton over there looking at North Korean troops. It's the only place I can. And so if you're a member there, you likely saw some of the footage and we saw some of the North Korean tactics. Plus you get to support me, make sure I can continue to do this every day. I'm fully independent. I don't take money from media companies. I don't take money from governments. I can do that because I'm supported by you guys. So check it out, become a member, links in the description. And of course, if you can't do that, you can always hit that subscribe button. That is free and makes a huge difference for me. So talking about this, what I thought was interesting is not so much the number of 100 troops KIA, but that they think around another 1,000 have been injured. And this is a really troubling number because that represents about 10% of the entire contingent. So we're talking about the fact that North Koreans, while they've been in combat for several weeks, it's been fairly clear that there is a steady ramp up in North Korea's independence, conducting combat operations independently. What I mean by that is that at first it seemed like they were maybe in what Russia calls its second or third line, kind of doing some rear area work. It seemed like at times they were integrated into Russian units. So you would have very small groups of North Korean, as little as one or two, operating side by side with Russian units to watch kind of how the Russians go about fighting. And recently we've seen some of the first footage of North Korean units conducting whole unit assaults. So an entire North Korean platoon in the case of what we observed. So around 30 to 50 soldiers operating independently. And this is kind of a high watermark, right? It's the first time we've seen them conducting offensive operations and doing so independently. But remember, there's only about 10,000 North Koreans in Kursk in total. So hearing that in the course of these attacks, already they're seeing 1,000 injured is really troubling. And we've seen their tactics. There's a real sign of ignorance, and I think it's a combination of two things. I think some of it is a language barrier where Russians are struggling to communicate essential battlefield information to the North Koreans. I think some of it is, being North Korean, because you have to remember that in North Korea, one, the level of development is just really low. And so for a Russian, they might say something like, put your cell phone on airplane mode because the Ukrainians will try to detect them and find your location using their drones, or they'll try to detect the signals. Well, if you're from a North Korean village that doesn't have electricity, you might as well have asked them to spin gold, or you might as well have asked them to build you a quantum computer, because they don't know, right? Like imagine if you handed a medieval peasant a cell phone and told them to put it on airplane mode. They'd look at you like you were insane. And that's probably closer to the reality for a lot of these North Koreans, is that the technological threats and realities of the battlefield are simply beyond what they can understand. So they may have been told, hey, watch out for drones. They may be like, what is a drone? Or they're like, oh, a drone, like a bee, like a beehive has drones, right? Males that perform work and don't reproduce. And they go, do the Ukrainians have trained bees that are going to attack us? And I'm not saying that it's that level of ignorance, but it could be, right? Because again, restricting information is an essential part of the North Korean control apparatus, right? And their military is going to be subject to greater levels of control because the military has the guns, right? The military is the thing that ensures the state has power and the average North Korean doesn't. So control of the military is essential. And I think that's another function of it, is that the North Korean military likely has been taught and told that their tactics are elite, superior, and that they're highly, highly trained. And that itself, remember, in North Korea, their leader, Kim Jong-un, is revered as a god. So imagine if God himself came down off his cloud and told you that a proper assault is done across a field in a narrow line in a platoon size or greater. And you would say, like, who are you to question literal divinity? Also imagine if that same God was willing to throw your family in a gulag for showing even the slightest hint of disloyalty. And so you combine those two factors, and nobody in North Korea is going to tell Kim Jong-un and tell their leadership that their tactics are out of date and ineffective. And so I think that sort of hubris is a reason that North Korea seems to be accruing these massive amounts of casualties. I think they literally don't have the cultural or technological knowledge required to fully understand the environment in which they're placed. And we've sort of seen that before, right? Where North Koreans get access to cell phones, and probably for them, one of the few times they've seen a screen device, and immediately accessed adult content. And I would be curious to know what they believe they're watching. Again, tough to say, but what I thought was also very interesting was actually this map here, which is a map zoomed in of the area around Kursk and where North Koreans have been reported. Essentially, they're reported as advancing in two locations. The first in kind of this northwestern corner, and then here in the east. And let's see if we can pull this up on the live map or the deep state map, and we'll try to get a little bit of additional knowledge about kind of what's happening here. So let's see if we can get this triangulated correctly. Yeah, we've got, let's see, I think this is about right. I think this is what we're looking at. So we're looking at North Koreans kind of operating in this area. And you can see that it looks like, despite sort of our, denigrating their abilities, it does seem like there is some evidence, right? Here's, I think, this lake. It looks like we're able to achieve some level of advances, pushing the Ukrainians out. So again, a high casualty rate, but effective nonetheless. But what I think is more interesting is that when we zoom in, and let's see if we can get out the satellite photo here of kind of where they conducted their attack, you could see that it is defined by kind of these tree lines and a fair amount of open fields, right? And so the Ukrainians, in all likelihood, looked at some of these open fields and said, okay, this is really where we want to force the North Koreans to fight in the most open terrain possible. And for them to conduct this assault, really, we also have known that because it's winter, these trees don't provide the kind of concealment that you might hope that they provide, right? A drone is still going to be able to look down through those trees, even, and see North Koreans, particularly at night, right? So this overhead cover is not as useful as you might think. All of these are things that, if you are a North Korean commander, you may not perceive them as threats on the battlefield, right? You may not sit there and be like, yo, those drones can see you at night. They can see the heat of your body, the heat of your breath. And there's an incentive for the North Korean government to not tell their soldiers these things, in large part because if you put out this set of information to them, like, how motivated would you be to fight if you believed that your enemy had like technology that was effectively magic, right? Again, you're talking about North Korea, a country with a human development index of something out of a middle-aged peasant. And so or middle-aged peasantry. And so when you have that, you can't, like, how are you going to tell your soldiers the truth about the South Korean military, right? You're going to, that they likely have fighter jets that can bomb them and never even be visual, will be hidden behind the horizon. That they have, guided systems that are capable of reaching out and touching them whenever they want. It's one of the things that South Koreans actually did that infuriated the North. The South Koreans flew drones, unmanned drones, over Pyongyang and dropped a bunch of leaflets. And it was a message, it was a sign and a symbol to the North Koreans to say, listen, observe that your country with its great air defenses and its, your leadership tells you that your country is almost fully militarized and ready to defend against the South. The South, we can penetrate your airspace at our leisure. We've chosen to drop leaflets on your capital city today, but tomorrow they could not be leaflets. And this message is abundantly clear, and it's meant to demoralize them because, again, as the South Koreans likely know, North Koreans just without the technology, the government of North Korea has an incentive to make sure that their people don't understand fully the technological superiority of the South and the backwardness of the North Korean army, right? Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to the folks like James Gerling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Nutson, Bastian Himmeling, Brian Kelly, Del McCombs, James Nolan, Henry Roussier, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you guys over in the next one. Cheers.